Hey, I'm Mason King, host of the IBJ podcast. And before we get into this week's episode, I want to tell you about the newest podcast from IBJ Media called Off the Record with the Indiana 250. In each episode, IBJ Media CEO Nate Feldman talks with a different leader on the Indiana 250 list of the state's most influential leaders. They discuss their vision for Indiana's future, their experiences in business, and their advice for other aspiring entrepreneurs. New episodes are released on select Thursdays. So go subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform so you can never miss an episode. Just search the Indiana 250 Off the Record. Thanks. This is the IBJ podcast for the week of Monday, September 18th, 2023, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Last month, the dining industry publication, Nation's Restaurant News, published a list of the top 25 restaurant groups in America. Now, it's important to know how they define restaurant group. It's not another way of saying a company that owns chain restaurants. Rather, the companies in the top 25 are made up of at least several unique concepts, generally upscale or fine dining brands that reflect the creativity one would expect from an independent restaurant. But the group operates at the scale of a major chain. Ranked 8th on this year's list was Indianapolis-based Cunningham Restaurant Group. If you need us to jog your memory, here are some of the local restaurants developed by Cunningham, mostly in the last 15 years. Mesh, Vida, Livery, Bru Burger Bar, Modita, Nesso, Provision, Rize, Union 50, Stonecreek Dining Company, Boulder Creek Dining Company, and Tavern at the Point. Founded in 1997, Cunningham Restaurant Group now counts 17 distinctive concepts spread over a total of about 40 establishments across Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio. And the stovetop at its development kitchen in downtown Indianapolis is full. CRG is opening several new concepts in the next year, and founder and CEO Mike Cunningham estimates that the group could have as many as 60 locations within 3 years. The highest profile addition to the culinary landscape will be located on Bicentennial Unity Plaza next to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Indiana Pacers owner Herb Simon is building a 30,000 square foot dining and entertainment complex called Commission Row, and CRG has been hired to develop and manage its three main components: a 220-seat upscale restaurant called Commission Row, a 110-seat speakeasy-style watering hole called Mel's at Commission Row, and a 260-seat event space called Above at Commission Row. CRG is also working on an indoor-outdoor casual dining spot called Shindig in the North Mast Corridor, and a family-friendly pasta joint in Plainfield called Theo's Italian. In this week's edition of the IBJ podcast, Mike Cunningham discusses in detail his plans for the new eateries, as well as adjustments he's making to existing properties in central Indiana. And he also dives deep into his philosophy for growing the restaurant group and why such a significant chunk of it has taken shape in downtown Indianapolis. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast Mike Cunningham, founder and CEO of Cunningham Restaurant Group. Mike, thanks for making time today.
Glad to be here.
So I walk by Commission Row, the construction site, every day on my way to work. So I feel like I've been watching it take shape in slow motion. Let's dig into that first. How did this relationship for creating Commission Row with Pacer Sports and Entertainment come about? Did you guys have a relationship before that?
We did. I have been involved with the Pacers. I'm a avid fan, season ticket holder, and go to the games. But I also had a really good friend that was a fairly sizable sponsor with the Pacers. And so Jack would have all these opportunities with the sponsorships to like go on sponsorship trips and things like that. And Jack's wife didn't necessarily always enjoy doing those trips. So Jack would often invite me. So I found myself at probably 3 or 4 sponsorship trips with the Pacers. And on those trips, their leadership team usually goes. And so Rick Fusion and I got to know each other a little bit through those trips. And that's where this thing started. I think Herb decided he wanted to do some sort of hospitality, food service component to the new plaza. And he was interested in having a local operator. So Rick and I knew each other. He was familiar with our restaurants, familiar with our operations, and said, hey, Mike, I remember meeting him at the Fieldhouse and stood in the main lobby of the Fieldhouse looking out at that plaza under construction. And he says, hey, Herb's got this idea. What do you think? And then that's where the ball started rolling. And things evolved a little bit. Some of the original plans were more geared towards a sports bar kind of complex. And we, through conversations, and we landed on doing something a little higher level, more unique. And there was quite a bit of sports bar offerings around the arena already, including the arena itself is basically one large sports bar. Yeah. And so my argument was, why do we do another sports bar right next to the arena? And so we ended up landing on doing this Commission Row concept, which is high-end steak, seafood, raw bar, caviar service. I mean, it's going to be really something the city's should be proud of when it's done. And it's sort of a legacy thing for Herb, because it's a big investment that would be difficult for a restaurateur to do on their own. So
the Pacers are building the property. They're outfitting the property, and the CRG is managing.
That is correct. We have a management contract with the Pacers and Herb, and we have a nice arrangement where there's an upside for us if the thing's successful, that we can enjoy some of that upside. So.
And there are 3 components. Last time I checked, there's the restaurant, and that's called Commission
Row. That's correct, yeah.
And there is a more kind of a speakeasy-style tavern.
Yes.
Is that basement level? Is that right?
It's basement level. No windows. It'll be a very dark and sexy, sort of like a speakeasy back in the day.
And that will be called Mel Speakeasy, I'm assuming due to Mel Simon.
Yes,
the brother in
honor of Herb's brother Mel, who passed away several years ago. So that'll be about 110 seats. The restaurant on the first level is about 220 seats. And then on the third level, we have what we're going to call above at Commission Row, which is a 260-seat event space. And then on the second level as well, we have a 72-seat patio that kind of wraps around the west and the south part of the building and overlooks the plaza. And that would be our patio seating for the restaurant, or it could be part of the event space as well.
What does Commission Row refer to? Is that a call back to something in that area?
It is, yeah. Naming restaurants can be difficult, especially when you've opened a few of them. And so we always try to look historically at where, what was on that site, or how do we relate to the building that we're in. Obviously, this was an empty site, so the building's brand new. But in the early 1900s, there were historically, you can find these images, they're really cool, but there was just a row of historic buildings, 4 or 5 story kind of typical downtown Italianate architecture buildings. And that was Commission Row. So that was a place where local neighborhood grocery stores would go get their products and take it back to their neighborhood. So we thought it was a nice connection where it was kind of the place where you got your food, and liked the name, and thought it related back to the history of the site. So
when will Commission Row, as the entire facility, open? I assume it absolutely needs to be up and running for All-Star Weekend.
Yes, yeah. When we started planning this thing, Shield Sexton is doing the general contracting on it. We always had January 22nd as the date that we were going to open, and it was a target that we established a year and a half ago, and we all understood we had to hit that date, and it was driven mostly by the All-Star game.
Yeah, and that's about 3 weeks before All-Star game, because the All-Star weekend is the February 16th to the 18th.
That's correct. Yeah.
So you want to be up and running for at least 3 weeks before the NBA hits the fan.
Yeah. So it was nice to have our staff get their legs underneath them. So we didn't want to open that weekend, that's for sure. But it will be an interesting weekend, to say the least.
So I assume that the Commission Row, the restaurant, will be open on all game nights.
Yes.
And I get Fever, Pacers, what have you. But you also needed to come up with something that would work the other, 250 nights of the year. That's something that would work, when there's a country act in town, or when Adam Sandler comes to town, or Dave Chappelle comes to town. Did that sort of the multiple use, multiple audience aspect of that come into play when you were trying to figure out what you wanted there?
Yes, very much so. We didn't, and purposely we didn't connect the restaurant to the arena. So you have to go outside of the arena and come into the restaurant. So we didn't want to be an arena restaurant. You may have been to some other arenas around the country, and I think of where the Chicago Bulls play. There's a steakhouse in the arena. Well, it's great for game days, but I'm not sure a lot of people are driving from the suburbs or conventioneers are going to United Center and eating dinner when there's not a game or a show. We want to fill this restaurant up 7 days a week. And so if the arena's got an event, we're going to have the challenge of feeding a lot of people right before a show, which we've have plans for, because that's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. Because the game is starting at like 7 or 7:30, right? Yeah. And so everyone wants their check at 7:25. So you got to be, for those nights, I would assume, the staff needs to be ready for that, which would be different from, maybe a Monday night.
Correct. Yeah. And then the other challenge is when there's a game. And we think because downtown and where downtown's going is a community with residential growing year over year, even on game nights, let's say a game starts at 7, that place empties out. If you're living in the suburbs, you may think twice about driving downtown and trying to park while there's a game. Although we will have valet, and we have up to 150 spots for valet. So we'll have the convenience of even being able to handle that when on game days. But, we need to put some people in those seats at 7:30 on those game nights. And we really think people that live downtown, or if you're in town for business or a convention or something like that, this restaurant is going to be a site that people will talk about. It's a really dramatic building. The finishes are dramatic. No cost was spared. And so we think it'll be a place that people will need to see when they come to Indianapolis.
Yeah. Now, as you know, the Mile Square has still has about a dozen steakhouses in it. And, places like San Ammo's that are internationally famous, and new steakhouses. I think Delmonico's is, or Del Frisco's.
Yeah, in the red space. Yeah.
In the red space, right. Did that give you any pause? I mean, that we're just going to add to the number of steakhouses downtown?
Well, I mean, we purposely have, I think, more options on our menu. We're doing a full-scale raw bar, so it would be maybe what Ocean Air had back in the day when they opened, and I know they still do it on a certain scale. But so if you wanted that, but maybe Elmo's doesn't offer that necessarily. But we also have composed fish, fresh fish dishes that an Elmo's or a Hyde Park may not have as much of. So it's more of a steak and seafood house. And again, it's an experience, right? People can get a New York strip on a plate in 10 different places, like you said. But what will they feel like when they're sitting there eating that 14-ounce strip? And what kind of experience are they going to have? What kind of environment are you putting them in? What kind of energy are they feeling? So those are all the important things that people decide, hey, this is where I want to go because this place makes me feel a certain way. And I think we have to make sure we hit that component well to compete with the 10 other steakhouses in town.
For the people that would be going to these events and the Pacer games, when I occasionally can scratch up enough money to take my family, I'm not thinking about getting a steak.
Right.
I mean, so that part of the project doesn't feel like it's for me.
Yeah.
But you feel like you're going to have a strong enough audience at those price points to make it worthwhile.
Right. I mean, any given Pacer game, there's probably 12 to 15,000 fans in the stand. And so we're going to have one turn probably before a game, which is 200 seats, so, we don't need to get everybody in that. And then we have to create something that people want to go to. So if somebody lives in the suburbs and they only go to places like this, maybe on a birthday or an anniversary, we have to fight to be that choice, right? And there's enough, 1.5 million to 2 million people that live in the central Indiana area. There's enough of that if we build it, they will come sort of approach. And so we don't have to appeal to everybody every night, but there are certain demographic that can't afford to eat in places like that on a regular basis. And again, it's a competitive place to be. And I mean, we have, you mentioned Elmo's. Elmo's is the 100-pound gorilla in Indianapolis and has been for almost a century. So that'll be a difficult challenge. But if you're looking for something different, we're going to provide something pretty special. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think almost has offers a certain experience that you can't get anywhere else. So they'll be fine. I wouldn't worry about saying almost, but and they do a great job there. So, but our city's growing and we're building new hotels, and hopefully soon we're going to figure out how to redevelop the mall. And the city market's getting redeveloped. And there's, with IU, what they're doing downtown, it's, with a $4+ billion spend. My family and my wife and I live downtown. We're bullish on downtown Indianapolis. So we think the future's bright, so we can fill these seats. So
would Mel's have food at a lower price point?
Yes. Mel's is going to be sort of a smaller plate menu, so more conducive to sharing. And we'll have items on that menu that we don't have on the menu upstairs. As always, people request them, we'll make it happen. But Mel's is going to have a little different vibe. So you can certainly go down there, have a couple cocktails, and eat some small plate stuff, and not spend quite as much money as you would upstairs.
So CRG has 15, 16 concepts, dining concepts.
I think we're up to 18 now, but
distinctive dining concepts. But you don't have anything like Commission Row, or did I miss something?
I would say the closest thing would be Provision.
Yeah.
With it's basically a steakhouse model with a fresh seafood component. We do not have a raw bar there, but
right. And that's up at the Ironworks.
Yeah. So that would be the closest thing to what we're doing here. But it's quite a different approach we're taking with this one than even Provision.
Is it possible that Commission could be a concept that you could replicate somewhere else?
Highly unlikely.
Okay. Yeah. So this would be really unique.
Yeah.
And stay just site specific.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. And Mel's, I assume, doesn't translate very well.
Well, no. And I think CRG as a company, there's a reason why we're kind of focused on the Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky region. We don't want to get on airplanes to go to work. So we keep things pretty tight. And I have no desire to drop something like this in Las Vegas or New York City, or, we just never been built to and had ambitions to do that sort of thing. So
I vaguely remember seeing Herb Simon in the back booth in the bar at Morton's before Pacers games. And this is before Morton's closed in 2020, which is a steakhouse, but also with a bar, kind of a speakeasy feel. Is there going to be a dedicated booth for Herb and Mel's?
Herb can sit anywhere he wants. But there was attention to that, like to make sure there was something that he might enjoy. So that was, I would be remiss to say that wasn't a conversation that's been had.
Okay, there you go. So the event space was called Above at Commission Row, and that would be available for weddings, corporate parties, other special occasions. I assume that the Pacers or Pacers Sports Entertainment would be able to use it as they need it to do their kind of entertaining, and would be a unique space for them as well.
Yeah, I think it's they have some space in the Fieldhouse now. They have a 120 person event space that was new to the Fieldhouse with this latest update. But certainly we invite the Pacers organization to be a good customer at Commission Row.
Okay. So the Commission Row as a entertainment business, as the restaurant, as the speakeasy, as the event space, will that be owned by CRG as a business, not the real estate? So
the business itself is owned by Herb Simon. And we have a management contract to run the business. And then we have
okay.
Yeah. So CRG, the restaurant will be branded CRG for those people that are VIP customers who use their VIP points. Those will be accepted at Commission Row and dished out. So it's going to feel and look and be everything of CRG concept. But, the business, we're basically contracted to run it. And
okay.
We get a fee to run it. And then we have a split. When everybody kind of gets their obligated number for rent, for example, and our management fee, and then if and when there's profits over and above that, we have a split.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be owned
that was an upside
by Pacers.
Yeah,
PSE, essentially some sort of entity you're involved with PSE. Your only involvement is as manager.
Managing. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, is managing this kind of facility something that you would be looking to get more into, or is this kind of a one-off just because of the relationship you have with the Pacers?
We consider all good opportunities, but this is a unique one. I mean, we haven't done a lot of this sort of thing. We did have a partnership in Cincinnati with Christian Moerlein Brewing and Moerlein Lager House, and we had an ownership position in that, but it wasn't a majority ownership position, and we ran that for 9 years. Similar kind of setup. It was a 3-level, 660-seat brew house right next to the Red Stadium, if you're familiar with it. So we built that, developed it, opened it, and operated it for 9 years. And then through COVID, we had an opportunity to either kind of take it over or step away from it. And we chose to step away from it. There were quite a few challenges. The Reds had come off of basically 8 years of being absolutely horrible, not the stadium being empty. Sales were still pretty solid. The thing was making money. What we're doing at Commissioner Row is not the first time we've done something like this. So we've had some good experience understanding how surge works, pre-game surge, and how to manage that. So some of that learning curve will apply to Commissioner Row. But to answer your initial question, we're open to these conversations, but it takes a very unique situation. We're not out advertising that we want to get into contract management.
Yeah. Okay. So again, just to make sure I get this right. So CRG's involvement in the Commission Row project is you have certainly come in and helped them develop the concepts that they feel comfortable with, that they think will work. But they are building the building. They own the building. They own the tables, the chairs, everything.
That is correct.
You guys come in and you run it.
Right.
In all 3 spaces.
All 3 spaces.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. I just want to shift gears for a sec, because we've been talking about how many restaurant concepts CRG has. I know this is hard, but can you briefly encapsulate the process for developing a restaurant concept? I know it's not, you're sitting at home at the breakfast table thinking, you know what? We need an Italian place. And you get on the phone and start ordering stuff. I mean, there is a process that you guys have.
Right.
That is not like subject to your whims.
Yeah. So it comes from different places. So I'll try to use some examples. We did Modita at Bottle Works. In Nesso was the same kind of approach. We felt there was a need in the marketplace. There wasn't a polished Italian. There certainly wasn't a polished Asian concept in the city. If you go to Chicago or any of the big cities, you can find multiple polished Asian concepts. And so we often take trips to kind of find inspiration. And I think back on the Modita project, we went to Chicago and had dinner at Girl and the Goat, Duck Duck Goat, which is their Asian concept. And then we had dinner at Mama Taro, which is in the Fulton District Market area. These places were booming. Place is tough to get into. There's a market for it. And in my opinion, I don't think any level of Asian food was done polished in this marketplace since P.F. Chang came down. And I don't mean I'm not sliding any restaurant out there but it's just, doing kind of hitting on all the cylinders, with decor and feel and service and all that stuff. So in that situation, it was, the marketplace needs this. We're going to develop it and find a good place for it. Livery, on the other example, another example would be Livery downtown. We had this beautiful building, and it happened to be an old livery horse stable. So we had the name, and then we were like, we already had American cuisine covered on Mass Avenue in multiple locations, and we needed to do something different. So the building sort of gave us direction, and similar to Union 50, it was the old Union Hall. So sometimes you build the concept around the building itself. But sometimes there's just a need in the marketplace. You identify what the need is and develop around that. And
we're developing the menu, though. I mean, you have gastronomic experts here on site that develop the menu.
Correct.
When you think, I want to have a Japanese place, think, well, we need teriyaki steak and California rolls. I mean, there's somebody putting a ton of thought into integrating the decor and the food and the overall concept.
Right.
And as you say, even, the site.
Right. And Modita was tough because that talent is not like lined up at your door, to do that. And we fortunately were developing that during COVID, and all of our landlords through COVID were we had 6 deals inked for new restaurants when COVID hit. So we had to navigate that. And I think, Hendrix, who are the developers over there, they were great to work with. And as all of us were, to kind of give us time, because it didn't make any sense, like push forward no matter what when our industry was shut down. So everything sort of got pushed back and delayed. We ultimately got all 6 of those locations opened, which is a real feather in our company's cap. I think our people did amazing things to get that done. But so we had to develop a menu, which we didn't necessarily have the expertise. And Braden Kellner, some of your listeners may know that name. He was a longtime chef at Tinker Street. And Tinker Street had sort of shut down for a while, and he was on the market, and he's a very talented guy. And we basically put him in our development kitchen downtown here on Meridian, and he played in that kitchen for almost a year.
So there's like a laboratory. There is a lab. Kitchen.
There's definitely a lab.
And where is that?
It's in the Chamber of Commerce building. So
you're joking.
No, it's right. That little restaurant that used to be cafe, Sunrise Cafe, I think.
Yeah, right.
Just on the left, you got the Bank of Indianapolis on the right, and then
is that where Ed and Marge's used to be?
Back in the day.
Yeah, oh, that's
the space. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we Bo Elder owns that building and operates it. And we swung a deal to utilize that kitchen, and we built, a sort of a test kitchen there. So it's R&D's all done there. And then we do, on occasion, we do events there too, which are pretty cool.
Okay, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ podcast and our interview with Mike Cunningham, founder and CEO of Cunningham Restaurant Group. So you started CRG in 1997. And certainly at that time, Central Indiana had a pretty limited supply of original independent restaurants that didn't hem closely to some kind of genre, like a local Chinese place, a local Italian place, pizzeria, much less have an operator that is working with, more than a dozen concepts. What do you think about what you've been able to accomplish in 25 years?
When we opened Boulder Creek in 97, I studied chain restaurants, like for just functionality and what they were doing that, I think, I don't know, California Cafe would be considered a chain back then, but they came to the mall. That was a restaurant I hadn't seen before, and I was a young guy, and I hadn't had the opportunity to dine in big cities, and I was enamored by what they were doing. I thought it was really fresh and exciting, having an open kitchen. You could see the chefs working and the food coming up on a granite shelf, and it just all was very. And I literally ate there like 10 times and just took notes and studied the place. So we did Boulder Creek. Some of that stuff came out. But I also understood early on, I was a big fan of Richard Melman in Chicago. Never met the man, love to meet him someday. But he was creating concepts and creating atmosphere and vibe. And so even at Boulder Creek on our first one, we were a mountain lodge in Brownsburg, Indiana. So we wanted people to feel like they were going somewhere other than they weren't in Brownsburg anymore. But when people would come into that restaurant early on, they would often ask us, like, where are you guys from? You must be a chain. Where are you from? And I felt that was a compliment. Today, that wouldn't feel like a compliment, right? Because the market's different. So when we started, we were trying to emulate chains because they were polished and functional. And those were the restaurants that made money. The independents would always struggle. And then as things evolved, we sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but we rode this wave of the marketplace changing from embracing chain restaurants to almost saying, I want to find the local guy. I want to find that, so we rode that wave. I think it really picked up steam in the, 2000 after the recession in 2008 for us anyway. And, starting in 12 or 13, our expansion became more rapid. And we had this wonderful 10-year run of cheap money and consumers really starting to the marketplace really starting to enjoy eating out almost more than ever before. I would absolutely say more than ever before. So, and the evolution of diners in the marketplace wanting to find cool, local, independent restaurants doing interesting things. The timing was right. So I don't never discount the fact that sometimes there's always a little bit of luck involved.
Yeah. So, so on one hand, like the strategy is be unique.
Yes.
Seed the area with a bunch of unique restaurants, while at the same time you do have a concept that is easily replicable. At least one concept, the Bru Burger, which you have, I don't know how many
15
of those.
units.
15 of those.
Mm-hmm.
So that strategy-wise, what is the point of Bru Burger?
So when you get a model that works really well, you want to duplicate it because it's a moneymaker for you, right? And we need to make money to grow, and we need to make money to take care of our team and so forth. So, and when I say model, our labor numbers are easy. The talent level is not, I don't want to offend anybody, but we're not, a chef at Vida is far different than the chef at Bru Burger Bar. And we're easier to staff that sort of situation than Vida. So, the cost of goods on that type of menu is a good model. So the labor cost is a good model. And it's appealing to everybody. So you made a point earlier about Commission Row may not be your cup of tea on a regular basis. Bru Burger Bar could be anybody's cup of tea on a regular basis. So it appeals to the masses, and we don't mind doing both. We don't mind creating, and we don't mind duplicating. Why not? So,
how many restaurants do you have downtown? And I count 9.
I think that's right.
Okay.
I don't usually count those on my fingers, but I trust that you're right. Yeah.
I'm not an expert in markets outside of Indianapolis. Isn't it pretty rare to have a restaurant operator that would have so many restaurants in such a concentrated area?
I think there's examples across the country. I think at Cameron Mitchell in Columbus in the short north. Now, I don't know if he has 9, but I bet you he has 5 or 6. There was an operator in Minneapolis, St. Paul area that I went up there one time and found, I think there was a steakhouse up there called Carnivore, and that guy had 3 or 4 restaurants on the same street. So I don't think it's unheard of. Again, I understand this market. I live in it. And we identified in 2010 when we opened Mesh and the basically the bottom of the recession, but we knew Mass Avenue was really good and up and coming before the recession. And, once we got here, we thought it had all the tools to be an entertainment district. And so if we can create some of that energy and to pull people this way, we can enjoy that. And we have, we may be saturated to a point of saturation on Mass Ave. And that's kind of why we're kind of reaching out on the edges of town. And we're doing a project next year called Shindig, which is out on Roosevelt by North Mass Boulder. And so we're kind of push out a little bit, but we're a community-based restaurant. We have no problem. And again, we have to make those decisions at what point is it too much. Yeah. Like we kind of stopped doing American cuisine on Mass Avenue because we had Mesh, Union 50, Brew, Tavern. And it's like, that's why we're reaching into our pocket to do other things. But that's always a forefront of my mind, especially as well, what point is enough? Yeah.
I'm just going to mention them all because I went to the trouble of figuring out where they were. So we're just looking at the northeast quadrant of downtown. This is Mass Ave and Mass Ave adjacent. Vida, Livery, Union 50, Modita, Mesh, Bru Burger, and Tavern on the Point. 7 restaurants. They are within 2 to 3 minutes of each other by foot. And this might be interesting to some people, the headquarters for Cunningham Restaurant Group is right in the middle of that. This is that neighborhood. Right. What's the closest place to here? Is it Livery?
Probably Livery, yeah. Mesh. Yeah, my wife and I eat dinner in our restaurants almost every night, and we literally walk out of our garage and go, where do we want to walk to go to get dinner? And so that's not a bad thing.
So but, is it helpful for you to be that close? I assume that when you're going to Livery or you're going to Mesh or whatever, it's not just as a diner. That you're scoping the place out. Is it helpful to have that supervisory?
I think it's interesting. There are restaurants in Lexington, Columbus, Ohio that I can't get to, and I get to maybe once or twice a year. And when I get there, the staff management team, they feel a different thing when I walk in the building. It's like, God, he's here kind of thing. In my restaurants downtown, we're in them so often, everybody's like, oh, there's Mike. It's not like there's no intimidation and there's no fear that Mike's going to critique my restaurant. But Mike will critique their restaurant. Like if there's an issue, I'm going to get up and talk to somebody about it. But it's always in a constructive manner. It's never, if somebody has to be fearful. But when I get into those outlying areas, if they don't know me well enough, just the persona of the owner guys here can be a little intimidating for those folks. And I try to ease that as much as I possibly can. But I think our restaurants operate better in downtown Indianapolis because there's that check and balance. I mean, there's eyes on it all the time. It's not just me. It's everybody in this office. Mike O'Donnell, our director of operations, chief operating officer, he's in these restaurants quite a bit. Rodney Kirschman, who's our DO for the downtown restaurants, he's in them, on daily as well. So we just, it's nice to, on the management side of things, it's nice to have a lot of things in one area. It's just so much easier to see it, lay eyes on it.
Yeah. Are there any kind of like economies of scale with having so close together? I mean, do some of the restaurants share personnel? Do they share
very little
supplies?
We may transfer somebody from one to another on occasion, but it's usually in a management level. But and if a server has some interest to move into another restaurant, and there's always that opportunity for them too. But it's not like our livery servers split time between mesh since it's across the parking lot. It's not typical.
Like when you're ordering parsnips, can you order for restaurants at the same time?
No, if you're ordering parsnips, you're going to get what you need in that back door for that restaurant. We're not buying a big case and dividing it up.
Okay, so they're all getting separate food deliveries?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you operate in Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio, and have how many restaurants at this point? 30?
42.
Oh, 42.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it still feels like, when you look at the map of all the restaurants, it is heavily concentrated on central Indiana. Why do you like to have everything so close? Are you really not that interested? I think you mentioned before, you don't want to have to take a plane to get to work.
Right. Yeah. CRG is fairly well known in the central Indiana marketplace. So there's an advantage. There are economy of scales in that, related to that. So in our VIP program has been a huge success for us when people have that ability to, get their points and they see some value in that. And it's been a big driver for us. So when we open something new in Indianapolis, there's a certain amount of advantage we have over opening something, let's say, in Columbus, Ohio. So we want to take advantage of that without being oversaturated. And Indy's a big city. So I think, we got a deal inked to do something in Westfield. Well, Westfield's blowing up. So why shouldn't we be up there? Right. So there's still opportunities in Indianapolis for us to continue to grow. But we just opened 2 restaurants in the Cincinnati market this past 6 months in the Montgomery community, Bru and Livery side by side. So we're still trying to, I think that's 5 locations in the Cincinnati market. And that would definitely be the one market that we have multiple locations. Most of the other ones, Lafayette, 1, Evansville, 1 location, South Bend, 1 location, all those being Bru's.
And Cincinnati is still 2 hours away by car.
Yeah.
I mean,
45. Yeah.
Yeah. You can get
it's
there,
easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. Yeah. And, Louisville, we drove down there 2 days ago, Chef Carl Chambers and I, and we were down and back and, left at 10 in the morning and home by 5 o'clock, so it just becomes easier. And I don't mind flying when I'm going to someplace fun and go on vacation, but I certainly don't want to get on a plane up for work every day.
Okay.
And there's no real reason to do it, right? Other than, we don't need to go 2,000 miles away to build a restaurant. So
you mentioned you feel like you might be pretty well saturated here in this general area, this, like I said, this quadrant of downtown. What other areas are you looking at? And let's start with the North Mass project, Shindig. What is that?
So Shindig's we're leasing 8,500 square feet of an old warehouse. So it's going to be a really cool space. And this east end of the building had a 10,000-ish square foot parking lot that was a gravel lot. And we are going to utilize about 80% of that for a patio. So we're going to have about an 8,000 square foot outdoor area. It's going to have ping pong tables and cornhole and fire pits and things like that. We love the name, by the way. Shindig is like an old vintage name for a party, right?
Yeah, right. That's
So
very 60s.
Yeah. And so then the menu's going to be super casual. It's basically going to be a pizza joint. We're going to have pizzas and salads and kind of sandwiches and some appetizers, but mostly conducive to sharing and family oriented and really kind of appealing. I think it'll appeal to everybody, but we're really trying to grab that young professional person in downtown that's living downtown. And we do a good job at livery and brew with that customer, but we want to expand on that, targeting that kind of group and getting to, we do a pretty good job with a 35 and up crowd in downtown Indianapolis, with our more pricier options, more sophisticated options. So we feel like there's still room to grow that younger demographic.
And North Mass obviously has the Massachusetts name in it, but I mean, it's a distinctive area. It is northwest of the North Split, and it is an area that for decades and decades was industrial.
Sure.
And it has since been, I don't want to use them, taken over. That's not exactly right, but has been identified as a place to redevelop, where developers are coming in with apartments, with retail, with entertainment. And at some point that just got on your radar, I assume.
It did. And I think North Mass Boulder, the rock climbing place over there, the popularity of that was kind of helped drive the decision too.
And that's like a fitness facility.
It's a rock climbing club basically, but it's large scale. They have a gym, they have yoga, they have both of my daughters are members there. So and they've done a really nice job building a community with the audience that we're talking about. And I don't know how many members they have, but it's a pretty busy place. And that along with it's a natural, and what the developers over there have plans for, like you said, apartments, and that area could look dramatically different in the next 5 years. And it's easy to get to. And, we have parking. So if you live anywhere downtown within 5 or 10 minute drive time, and, let's say if the weather's not conducive to walking or biking, you could pull your car up there and be there and not have the headache of what parking is on Mass Avenue or in the center of the city.
So what's the timing for opening Shindig?
We'll probably open that in the late second quarter, early third quarter of 24.
Okay. Now, I know we just talked about leaving Mass Ave alone, but tell me about the Bemberg.
Oh, well, the Bemberg's has been on the drawing board for a long time. Because we have 7 restaurants within walking distance, we knew it had to be in the general vicinity of Mass Ave. And we found the old, I think the restaurant in there was called The Owner's Wife. It lasted about a year.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So that's the building.
Related to the Bruges.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it sat empty for a while. And we were kicking this idea around. We had a different location kind of, but it couldn't get anything worked out. And this product is in other cities. We just didn't have it in Indianapolis yet. And how
do you describe the product? What is it?
It's basically a private bar, so a membership only bar. Now, more often than not, you'll see these membership type clubs, and Soho House has done it with the hotel industry, but you would see it would be basically a private restaurant. We weren't interested in doing that because we felt like the restaurant side of it would be covered with the 7 restaurants you could walk to from this bar. So it became a different model for us. And it's really designed for quiet, private space to do business, to network to some extent, although that we don't promote people being bothered in there. And so it's a great place to have a meeting at 5 o'clock after work, talk about something, or if you're going to dinner, grab a cocktail before dinner or after dinner. If you're going to a show or if you're going to a ball game, it's great to grab a couple cocktails. The whole idea is to do something. You're hitting Bemberg before or after doing something else. Right. It's definitely not a place where, and our members are not using it this way, and it wasn't designed this way to belly up to the bar and spend 4 hours or 5 hours at the bar. Don't have TVs behind the bar. But again, it's by design. We do have a couple of TVs in the space, one in a conference room for business and another area for if somebody wanted to kind of come in and watch a ball game or something, they could do that.
You have a sense of the price of membership?
Yeah, the price of the membership is a $1,500 annual membership, and there's a $250 monthly spend.
Oh, wow. Oh, so you need to go.
Yeah, you need to go. And
it's like a private country club.
Yeah, right. Same model, but we give people an opportunity to kick their credits down the road. And so it's not like you have to, if you're somebody that can't meet that minimum on a monthly basis, we'll help you find ways to meet it. Whether if you have an event, if you're want to have a group of people in and the capacity is available, you're welcome to do that too. So we often have 50, 60 people in for an event where members like, I want to host these people.
Mm. And I'm sorry that I'm not up to date on this. Is this open already?
Oh yeah, it's been open for almost a year. It's a little on the down low. Now I think it's not so much anymore though, because I think
the point though.
It is, and the Star just did a story on it too, and we didn't invite them in to take photographs, but we don't mind people knowing it's there.
Okay, that's great. More on the outskirts. There's some shuffling going on. Thinking Greenwood. This is a tester. Can you tell me what's happening?
Yeah. So we have some of the, we call them the Creek restaurants. So it would be the Boulder Creeks, Stone Creeks, and Churbanos and things like that. These restaurants are all, if they're not over 20 years old, they're approaching 20 years. We're very proud to say they're all still open and thriving. So, but when restaurants get of that age, there has to be, you can do facelifts on the dining room and you do those in short periods of time, like overnight, wallpaper something and be fresh the next day, but you can't do that in the kitchen. So we have already accomplished most of what we have to do. For example, Boulder Creek, we shut that down for 30 days and gutted the kitchen and put an entire new kitchen in. Our Stone Creek in Greenwood is in a building, and our landlord's been A+ landlord for 20 years. But the building's sort of crumbling. The history of the building, there were 4 or 5 restaurants in there prior to us going in 20 years ago that failed. It has a basement in it. We have some real issues with that building. And also the marketplace in Greenwood, sort of the growth is happening south of Greenwood. Center Grove obviously is what it is. And there's a lot happening south of Greenwood all the way down into Bargersville. And we feel like long-term, we're better positioned down there. So we are we're actually doing the development on it as well. We bought 6.5 acres down there on 135 and Stones Crossing. And so what we're developing is a new Stone Creek that will set back at the back of the property, overlooking a fairly large retention pond and a nice wooded area. It'll be a very beautiful setting. And then we're doing a Bru Burger Bar on the corner of this 6.5 acres. And then we're also doing a 16,000 square foot retail center. So that'll be a new development will probably come online with that towards the end of 24, probably start turning dirt in the next 2 months. So Greenwood is a bit underserved today, I think, restaurant wise. People sort of gravitate towards the mall, and the mall's the mall. So we are really looking forward to bringing something really fresh and new to that market. I think it's starving for it. Besides
Shindig and Commission Row, is there anything else new planned for downtown?
Not for downtown. We do have an Italian concept called Theo's Italian that's opening up in Plainfield in about 3 weeks.
Okay. And that is in the Perry, is it the Perry Crossing?
Yes.
Similarly, there's a little bit of a shuffle there.
Correct.
With their properties there. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah. So again, referencing back to the creeks getting old, that Stone Creek and the mall was approaching, I think it's in its 18th or 19th year. Again, we've kept up on the front of the house. If you come into that, or you came into that restaurant 6 months ago, you saw a pretty polished front of the house. But the kitchen was falling apart. So we had this opportunity to, the old Clada, which was in the front of the mall, had been vacant for 4 or 5 years. In all of our restaurants, we have a brew there as well. And we have a 350 seat event center at Perry Crossing. So even though the mall struggled over the years, there's space in that mall that's never been leased in 20 years, still sitting empty, but there's enough there. And the community, have supported us extremely well in our restaurants up there. So that's why we kept pushing forward and now putting our 3rd restaurant in that mall. So again, having to retool Stone Creek, we had this opportunity to kind of take over the Clada space and get a fresh new Stone Creek, brand new kitchen, brand new everything. And then we're going to retool the old Stone Creek into this family Italian concept called Theo's Italian.
Okay.
And by the way, Theo's my grandson's name.
There you go. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Theo likes pasta, I assume.
Yeah, we like Theo.
Okay, great. Bloomington, Bru Burger. I think is that your first step into the Bloomington market?
It is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We've looked over the years. several things have held us back a little bit, and this might be the fluctuation of population with the school. But the big hurdle was the liquor license. And Bloomington liquor licenses are quite expensive, and we never were willing to. It never worked well in our projections to say, "Hey, we're going to spend a couple $100,000 for a liquor license to go down to Bloomington and sell beer and drinks to college kids." You know what I mean? So that was always sort of a hurdle. And then we Annex, who's a local developer here, it was developing a small apartment complex on 3rd and Grant. And they had one retail spot in there that in 3rd and Grant, location-wise, we thought was pretty strong. It was within walking distance of everything that happens around the campus. I think we're a block and a half from the gates at IU. And that developer was pretty savvy in going out and getting a liquor license, and then came to us and said, "Hey, we want a brewery here, and we have a liquor license." So we were like, "Oh, well, let's talk," Wow. So we worked out an arrangement and to put the deal together, and that should open up probably in February of 24.
How many restaurants do you think you're going to have in 3 years?
I think we may be approaching 60 restaurants.
Wow.
3 years. Yeah. I mean, we're still on par doing 3 or 4 a year.
So you have forgive me, you do have concepts cooking. You have things that are brewing, simmering.
Yes, there's always thoughts of what's not here. What can we do? Mediterranean is something that we've been kicking around for a while, just finding the right opportunity to do it. And that potentially could be on Mass Ave, because I don't think anybody's doing that sort of thing.
You're not, several places where you really aren't. You're not in Broad Ripple. I mean, you have one place in Carmel, I think, one place in Zionsville, one place in Noblesville, one place in Fishers, the southern part. Oh, we talked about the Greenwood area, but yeah, the southern part.
Not
of
on the east side.
Yeah, right.
The west side, we started our company on the west side of Indianapolis in Avon, in Brownsburg, Plainfield. So, but yeah, there are potential opportunities down the road for us here still. And I think the north side, there's lots of opportunities. But I think the fact that we came downtown and focused on that for quite some time, probably the focus was down here more so than the north side, and maybe why. But I mean, Keystone the Crossing, we have 3 restaurants there. We have Rize, Provision, and Bru. Again, anybody that knows the north side of town, which I know a lot of your listeners will, with the interstate system the way it is, and Keystone and 31, I literally drove from Westfield to Keystone of the Crossing in like 9 minutes. So that's how easy it is to get around town up there. So we don't feel like we need to reach way out somewhere north. Getting around the north side of town with what they've done up there is pretty easy.
You're going to stay in Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio, or is there somewhere else?
Yeah, I don't see. We've considered popping up into Michigan because we have restaurants we can kind of spring off of in South Bend and Fort Wayne. So we're right there on the border anyway. But we haven't. We've looked in Detroit. We've looked in Ann Arbor. Some places like that. But we're not. I wouldn't say aggressively pursuing that.
Well, it sounds like you're real busy, so I will let you go. But thank you so much for bringing us up to date. These are fascinating projects.
Awesome. Thank you.
Why, thanks again to Mike Cunningham. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few stories in the latest IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, everybody loves vibrant neighborhoods and a good comeback story. But residents of the up-and-coming Riverside neighborhood are concerned about a corresponding surge in their property taxes. Taylor Wooten reports on a city pilot program that could grant them some grace. Also in this week's issue, Mickey Shuey reports that Mayor Joe Hogstad's administration has decided against redeveloping the city-county building and instead will consolidate offices from around the city into the 28-story behemoth. And Peter Blanchard examines the national bidding war for big manufacturing projects that pits Indiana against states across the country and drives up the cost of incentive packages. Again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.